afterwards. You can use it to indicate that you want to speak, and then take it down again afterwards, and so on. We will do the voting in line with the procedure and the rules in our constitution. I'll first check on whether we want a recorded vote. If that number's reached, then we'll take the recorded vote. But if no recorded vote is requested, voting will be done by a show of hands and clicking the raised hand icon. It looks like we're already live on our YouTube channel and streaming, so please be aware that we are on show to the wider public, and the meeting is being recorded. So without further ado, I think I've got all my papers in order. So right, members, welcome to the Development Committee on the 25th of March 2021. We've got quite a lot to get through this evening, including some speakers. So I will ask in advance that all members are concise with their comments. I will give everyone the opportunity to speak, but due to the number of items that we've got, it's quite possible that we will be limited on your opportunity to come back with subsequent points and subsequent questions. So please do your best to cover all that you wish to say in your initial speech, because it is important that we get through our business this evening. Item 1 is apologies for absence. They've been received from Councillor Ianu and Councillor Weston. Item 2 is our substitutes, which for Councillor Ianu is Councillor Wilkinson, and for Councillor Weston it is Councillor Steptoe. Our non-members attending, we have Councillor Rowe, Councillor Ward, Councillor Hoy, Councillor Wotton, Councillor Gooding, and I think that is everybody. So welcome to you all. Welcome to our speakers who are already with us, and of course welcome to anyone that is watching us on the YouTube channel. Item 4 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of February 2021. I'll take it that you accept those unless anyone indicates otherwise. Just give a moment. And I don't see anyone indicated. Thank you for that. Item 5 is declarations of interest. On behalf of all members, I will declare our non-pecuniary interest on items 9 and items 10. So there's no need to mention those separately. Councillor Steptoe.
Chairman, obviously declare interest as a county council member, but also items 9 and 10, other than what you have just said, other directors, partners of the business there are known to me.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8, I'm Chairman of Stanbridge Parish Council, and item 11, I'm Ward Councillor for that item.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8, non-pecuniary interest. I am the ward councillor, one of the ward councillors, and I do know this applicant, but I have had no dealings with it on this application.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. A non-pecuniary interest on items 9 and 10, like others, being that I'm also Chairman of Rochford Parish Council.
Thank you. Item 6, the applicant has asked that this item be removed from the agenda, so that is done. Item 7 is 106 Lower Road, Holmbridge. which is an outline application to demolish a garage, workshops to construct 12 flats. Mr. Stranks is going to take us through this one, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is to a site of a filling station and service garage on the southern side of Lower Road, opposite the junction made with Hillcrest Avenue that you can see edged red on the screen before you. The uses on the site are no longer in operation and the site is fenced off. If we could jump to the picture, sorry, the bird's eye view, if you wouldn't mind, if that's pic 2 bird's eye from north. Members will see that the site has an area of 0.21 hectares, thank you, and extends at a depth to the rear, backing onto the Rayleigh Golf Club course. Houses adjoin either side, as you can see from this image, and there are chalet bungalows on the opposite side of the street. The site is to an elevated position, more or less at the top of Coventry Hill. The application for consideration is an outline application to demolish the existing buildings that we can see here and structures and construct a development of 12 self-contained flats. The application particulars state each flat would be 2-bedroomed with 5 flats to both ground and first floors with 2 flats in the roof space. The application is submitted to seek only the principle of the development with all matters of access, layout, appearance, scale and landscaping all reserved for the necessary reserved matters application that would follow the grant of outline permission should members grant it. The plans submitted are therefore indicative. I labour that point, and submitted only to demonstrate that the quantum of development sought can fit the site. If we can jump to 2 plan indicative layout, thank you. Those indicative plans that you see there on the right hand side, you'll see the existing situation with the buildings existing on the site. And if you look at the left hand side, it's an indicative layout of what might be possible, but that building is shown in a purple dotted outline if you can follow that. It can be seen that the applicant has considered the 45-degree test that we apply primarily to householder extensions, but officers do rely on this also when considering other matters. It's a useful tool. It takes the more or less approximate position of the nearest window looking rearwards and judges the impact of what might be overshadowing and dominance upon those particularly primary rooms such as kitchens and lounges, etc. It is suggested that the existing access points in this layout, thank you, Claire, you'll see that there being a filling station is no doubt got an in and out facility, and the applicant is suggesting, at least in this indicative plan, that they could be made use of, providing a small car parking area to the front of the site, as Claire is indicating with the cursor there, and then access to the majority of the car parking and amenity space behind the building, down the side of the building adjoining number 104. The amenity area that's shown would equate to a surplus of 60 square metres, some 360 square metres in area, that is more than required for the 12 flats proposed. And members will see at paragraph 3.42 to the report that officers consider that the parking shortfall, which was 3 spaces, you only see I think 24 spaces there, and 27 would be required for a scheme of this size, could be met from that 60 square metres shortfall. So bearing in mind that members aren't being asked to consider this layout, it's just to help the council as a whole come to a view that the development would fit. District officers feel that the shortfall in car parking could be met from the surplus in amenity space provision. If we see the street scene, again only indicative, but bearing in mind comments raised about the potential height, and members are not being asked to consider this, but the applicant has suggested again, this is the kind of thing that they may have in mind should permission be granted. And that may help members to understand the quantum of development and how it might look. The elevation would require sensitivity given the raised area of land, but that I don't think should be resulting in a squashed or suppressed building, bearing in mind that many prominent landmarks, churches, pubs, buildings like that can often be successfully provided on a high elevated ground. And as the majority of the buildings that are 2-storey in the locality, some vertical increase in scale would depending on the design, could be attractive on the final solution. If outline planning permission is granted, members would get that opportunity to assess that design at the reserved matters stage. You can't build an outline permission if it's granted. You would have to come along with all the matters that we can't consider tonight as a separate application. What an outline permission does, it gives them agreement in principle. It establishes anything necessary through 106 contributions, etc., and allows the developer to proceed with confidence on the understanding that he could get 12 units on the site. The site falls within a predominantly residential area, so district officers are advising that this would be the most suitable use. The use would redevelop what appears to be a redundant site with a residential use more compatible with the adjoining residential uses, removing commercial noise from workshops and fumes from fuel storage. The provision of 2-bedroom accommodation would help diversify the local housing mix, redressing the dominance of larger, particularly detached and semi-detached housing. The development would have potential to provide 2 shared ownership affordable units unless a provider cannot be found, in which case the officers are recommending a financial contribution be set out as you can see in the recommendation. That recommendation is therefore approval, Chairman, subject to the applicant entering into an agreement under Section 106 of the Act to secure the provision of affordable housing and or the financial contributions and to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you. Just one point before we go any further. Councillor Hookway, you joined part way through this presentation. I think given the rules that we're working under, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to vote on this particular application when the time comes. I hope you understand that position.
Yes, Chairman, thank you, I understand.
Thank you. Right, members. Councillor Hoy, as a visiting member, and this is your ward, I believe. Would you like to start?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I do have concerns about this application, and I would also like to mention that although it is an outline planning permission and, as Mr. Strank says, indicative of what could happen, I have found in the past that items which may be mentioned or specified in this report will be assumed to be acceptable when they are put in the reserved matters report, and this has happened previously. So I want to draw attention to some of the areas I've got concerns about, which aren't necessarily specific to the outline, but maybe more specific to the style and design and the height. This is clearly, we've seen the indicative plans that's been shown by Mr. Stranks on our screen. First of all, I'd like to point out about the swans, which is the picture that was shown of the building, which was significantly taller than the ones either side of it as planned, which is what they're suggesting they might like to build there. The swans is in a different part of Holbridge. It's well over a mile from this site, and it is near the river and is along a short stretch of road which has, if you like, buildings of the same stature. There are flatted areas there and large detached houses which have quite high roof lines, so they don't stand out. They're amongst similar buildings, and it's likely that will happen for a couple more at least along that bit of the road, and that is not a problem. This part of Holbridge is a mixed street scene. It's detached, semi-detached houses, and as you saw in the previous map, it's not necessarily chalet bungalows. I'd say they're bungalows opposite, so it's much more mixed. I think from the first point of view that we as councillors shouldn't really be agreeing to something that is going to be so significantly taller than the buildings around it, particularly on such a high point. This is very close to the highest point in Holbridge. It's a few metres up the road, and it is the highest point. I think this will be dominating the street scene and is not at all in keeping with the street scene as it is shown. The other issue is there are no flats in the area at all. The nearest one's probably about half a mile away down the hill. There's mention in this report of it being on a sustainable or talk of sustainable transport links. It's one bus route, which is about half a mile away, which would be the number 20, which stops running every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes at about 8 o'clock at night. And you may be able to get a last bus into Holbridge about 10:30, 11:15. It leaves Holbridge around 11 o'clock, one bus, and that's it. So I don't regard it as sustainable as the report, the applicants feel it is. That's really it. I think the rest can wait to the reserved matters. I've got concerns about cars being parked next to gardens along those lines, but that can be reserved matters. That's not a problem. But at the moment, I'd just like councillors to think about the size and bulk of the building that was shown and whether or not that's appropriate in this area. I personally think that it should be restricted to 2 stories, and I don't know if it's at all possible now that the report could put a condition that it can't be above the existing ridge line of the properties either side of it. That's what I have to say at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see any other non-members indicating, so I'll move on then. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to repeat the points that were raised by Councillor Hoy. The first one, really, my point is it's unfortunate that we've lost the local business, but that's where we are. But it is to follow up really about this implication from the plans that were shown. I know they're indicative, and I know that we will do this at reserved matters stage. But my concern is that if we give outline planning permission for 12 flats, it's almost implied from the plans that were shown that these will need to be taller than the existing building. So the ridge line is important for me. And I'm not sure whether, if we go to, this is a question really for officers, if we go to reserved matters and it turns out that we think the size and the scale is too large, but we've given permission for 12 flats, where does that leave us? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll gather up questions at the end for efficiency of time. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can only support the comments that have been made. I have serious concerns with outline planning consents from bitter experience within my own ward in Rayleigh with Crown Hill, and the same as Councillor Wilson has said, it gives me grave concerns that once outline planning consent is granted for 12 units, we're stuck. And even when it comes to reserved matters, this is exactly what happened in Crown Hill. Outline consent was given for 5 flats, and when they tried to put it on there, they found it particularly difficult, but we had to grant it because outline consent was given. And I'm concerned about that. The other thing that concerns me as well is I hear what Mr. Strank said about the parking. I would expect, if I was going to be on the committee when this comes for the full consideration, that we don't consider the 3 extra parking spaces. They must be included within that 60 square metres, and I would think that should be there. The other thing is, and I don't know whether or not at the appropriate time the pictorial image could be shown again of the bird's eye view, but whereabouts is the amenity space? Because it looked as though there was a little bit of parking at the front, then there was the building, there was a lot of parking behind, and then the amenity space was right at the back. So in other words, anybody coming out of the building, this new building, has to go past the car park to get to the garden space, which I suppose it's up to each person wants to buy the unit, but it doesn't seem particularly attractive to me. So I'm just interested where that is. My concern is the implication of granting outline consent for 12 units, and if they have to squeeze it on there because we've done it, we've tied ourselves in knots. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think some of my thunder has already been stolen there by the previous speakers. I wouldn't disagree with what Councillor Hoy and others are saying. I always find it very sad personally to see another garage disappearing, but that's for obvious reasons. But picking up on the garden situation, I would have thought it would have been far more advisable to have the amenity space directly behind the building, because if there are children and things in the flats, rather than to have to walk across car parks and things. Makes more sense to me. So I'm inclined to agree with the other speakers that on this outline, we are opening ourselves up for something that we may not want at the end of the day. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. I can only support what the other speakers have said, and the fact that granting the permission for this development before we actually have anything to say on it other than the 12 flats, I think there's so much difference of opinion on this, I won't be able to support it.
Okay. Could I ask Mr. Stranks to come back and talk? I think members are indicating that they've got concerns about what the size and bulk of a proposed development might be against 12 units. So if 12 units can't be incorporated in something that we consider to have a reasonable size and bulk, how does that argument play out, please?
Chairman, what is before you tonight, even though the applicant has tried to help us with indicative plans to show that his scheme he thinks fits, yeah, or they think, sorry, fits. What is before you is to agree the quantum. As members have said, sometimes they might feel that on a constrained site, permission has been given, as said, for 5, and in their view 5 didn't fit. Now, this layout shows that there is room to provide the necessary garden space, even with taking some of it to provide the car parking space shortfall. There's reasonable gaps and relationships to the boundary. We spoke earlier about the 45-degree tests and other policy things, you know, to do with recycling existing sites and so forth. So what the applicant is showing is a scheme to say, I propose 12 units, and this is how I would fit them on the site. He's got 10 flats split between 2 floors, but he's got 2 in the roofing system. We showed, I don't need you to jump to that, Claire, but we showed an indicative, and that's the important point, an indicative elevation they're showing of how that might look. Now, if members are of the view that the development should only be 2-storey, it may well be that the developer can fit, or whatever, 12 flats still on there, but at 2-storey form. This is the point, I think, where members have got to determine if a scheme that would include some accommodation in the roof space would be acceptable. It wouldn't be a full 3-storey, what we call 2.5, and that always, I agree, gives us problems in description. Or if members are limiting it to 2-storey form without accommodation above that, this is the point where members should effectively refuse permission, because the applicant has one of the limited particulars that they're obliged to provide in this way. There's several ways you can apply for an outline, and this is one where they leave everything to the reserved matters stage, other than can we put 12 on the site. So if members are so clear that 2 stories should be the maximum, this is the time that they should perhaps grant planning permission, but with a condition to say that it be only limited to 2-storey. I would just, while I'm in, I heard a comment about limiting it to the same height as the adjoining buildings. That would be, I think, rather unfair and give up, I would suggest, an opportunity to do a good design. If you have the governance of the 2 adjoining ridge heights as some kind of datum, it loses the opportunity for the architect to exercise some flair and add some visual interest in the street. So I'm happy, I think, with a condition that would say to 2 stories, if that's members' thinking. But I would hate to think that we would lose an opportunity for a good design with good roof to wall proportions, constrained by the limit that they must follow the existing roof. But if members feel that they want it to match the adjoining roof heights, that is something that members could achieve. But I just worry that the design would be heavily compromised. I hope that helps, Chairman.
Thank you. For me, I think given the location of this building and the prominence on the hill, as Councillor Hoy mentioned, virtually the highest point in Holmbridge, seen by many passing through the district. I think the quality of the design is perhaps more important than putting a specific size limit. And certainly I would be encouraging some informative that made comment about the quality of design that was required in this location. But members, we are talking about the principle of the development here, with all matters reserved. I think members have also indicated that they would expect the proper provision of parking space as well with this. Now, I'm not seeing any other members indicating at the moment. Could we just lose the share screen, please, for clarity? Right. There are hands up. Right. Can I just remind you, members, we want to progress, so can you please be fairly definitive with what you wish to say? Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Is this for Mike Stranks? Mike, can you clarify how many parking spaces this could be short if we let this development go through? Because I'm very concerned that we would lose valuable amenity space for the families on this. I just would like clarification.
I think I can answer that one. It's sort of been mentioned already. It was 2 short places short, but the appropriate amenity space can still be retained by adding those 2 additional parking spaces.
Right, okay, because on the report it actually says 3. Thank
you. Councillor Wilkinson then.
Briefly, Chairman, thank you for letting me come back. I hear what Mr. Stranks is saying. Am I right in thinking that we can't say, because I understand the principle of good design as well, and I do understand about not matching the ridge heights. Are we able to say that, yes, the principle of developing this into residences is acceptable, but only 2 stories or only 10 flats or what? Because if they think that he needs 2.5 stories to get 12 flats in, then clearly he can't put 12 flats into 2 stories. So we're going to end up with a really poor design. So I just want to understand what we can and we can't say, Chairman, because I don't want to just outright refuse it if we don't have to, but I would just like to, I'm very uncomfortable with this at the moment. That's all.
I think the principle of the application is for 12, so that's the application. The height is something where I believe we can add some further information. So I'll just ask Councillor FD, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Chairman. Would it be possible if I was to put a council proposal in of up to 12 flats? Then it gives us an opportunity if they put less in.
This isn't I'll let Mr. Stranks, but the application before us is the application before us.
Yeah,
that's important to know. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to make a proposal that the height of the building is in comparison to the height of the buildings adjacent to that property. And I'm sure that somebody who is designing a roof will design a roof the same as a roof is. I don't see any difference. If it was next door to a church, then I would turn around and say, yeah, you can go as high as a church. But I'm sure their design people can design a roof equally as well without dormers in the top. So and also for the parking, to be away from the rear of the property, and the amenity space closer to the property, please.
So your first amendment is that the scale and bulk of the scale and height should be in keeping with the surrounding area.
Correct.
Can we just take these one at a time? Because I suspect that'll be the easiest way to progress. Mr. Stranks, can you just comment on whether that would be an acceptable additional condition, please?
I don't think so, Chairman. The terms like comparable and that they're loose. You have to think that the applicant, although they may be listening to this discussion, has got to think, what must I do to comply with the consent? I think it's clearer if you say 2 stories, okay, because it's quite easy to design and show that this is 2 stories high. If we start saying up to and comparable, it's a very loose permission, excepting of course that the terms of this outline application are pretty open anyway, but you've got to have preciseness to any condition that you put in.
Okay.
So I'd be far happier with 2 stories, Jim.
Councillor Stanley, are you willing to amend your first additional condition to include that term 2 stories?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Right. Do you have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Wilson. So that's an additional condition has been suggested, proposed and seconded to include 2 stories. Now let's just go on to the second element of what you said, Councillor Stanley. Could you just state that again?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. To put the amenity space directly behind the building and the car parking to the very rear of the land.
Okay, Mr. Stranks, would you like to comment on that? One,
Chairman,
please?
I don't know if Claire can show the layout, please, whilst I speak. But it's an interesting point, Chairman, because sort of the profession is divided over this. Our colleagues at Urban Design at Essex County Council quite often favour the same, for the same reason, an outlook over to an amenity space when the car parking pushed to the back of the site where it might be deemed to be less nuisance. The problem you sometimes have there is that a shared communal space outside, if you like, private windows. So what we have here is quite an interesting solution, accepting that this is indicative, where they've got some like buffer space that's shown behind the building, and then you have car parking, and then you have amenity space close to the golf course area at the back. So if you wanted more a quiet retreat, etc., you've got that an advantage at the back. So it's an interesting concept. If members are clear that they're insistent that the amenity space should be behind the building and the car parking at the back, you could put a condition on that. But again, I just advise caution that you could be frustrating a good design, that actually gets the car parking in, is in this case, which is only indicative, might cause less nuisance, and then there's quite quality, good space at the back. But I'm in your hands, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll just lose the share screen again so as I can see. Right, Councillor Stanley, do you wish to progress with your proposal?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Okay. Could I just ask if there is a seconder for Councillor Stanley's? That is seconded as well. So that is a second additional condition. Right, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I must be one of the minority here. I think this is quite a good design. I like the look of the front elevation, and I think perhaps if we start putting conditions on it at this stage, we may well be limiting the amount of design that can happen. I would support this in principle as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if I got an answer from Mike about up to 12 houses, because that would keep it very open and not limit the architect.
The up to 12, please, Mr. Stranks.
Chairman, the up to 12 is vague. The idea of the outline permission is that it gives confidence. So to say up to 12 is loose in my view. If members are insistent upon it, we could draft something, but I'm not sure it would satisfy all the tests. So I wouldn't advise it. I would let the applicant come back with a 2-story scheme, and if he can't fit 2 stories in, which I think is members' fear, if he can't fit 12 in 2 stories, he would have to make a new application, perhaps a full in its own right, having established the permission in principle. But the problem with saying up to 12 and suppressed in 2 stories, you may end up pushing, we saw those 45-degree lines earlier, we may end up having to have form going deep into the site, compromising car parking spaces, compromising amenity space. So I think 2 stories is better, but rather than saying up to. But if members feel strongly on this, that they would like a condition of up to, I think we could, if you like, reluctantly live with it.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson, you're going to be the last one, because bearing in mind the constraints on our time this evening.
I appreciate that, Chairman. I just wanted to mention something I said before for Councillor Stanley to consider if he wants to add it, was around the car parking. Mr. Stranks said that there is additional amenity space that could provide the outstanding car parking. I would like to see that is included, as opposed to it's possibly included. As I just wonder if Chris wants to include that as one of his amendments or not, really, because I would favour that.
I think when we get to a full proposal, it is within our gift to refuse if it doesn't meet our car parking standards. So I personally believe we already have enough protection within that.
All right, Chairman.
And I'm quite confident that the message of this discussion this evening will be noted by the applicant. So and I'm sure Mr. Irvin will tell me if I'm doing something wrong, but do members wish to take the 2 additional conditions separately, or are we happy? So that's a nod. So I only need 1 nod, so we need to do those separately then. Right. So we're going to start voting. So the plan is that we will vote on the additional condition of 2 stories, first of all. Then we'll vote on the additional condition of swapping the amenity in the parking space. Then we'll vote on the whole application with or without these 2 additional features. Is that the correct way to do it? Nod of head. Right, okay. So just before we start any voting, is there any member that feels that they've not heard all of the evidence and all the points that they've put through transmission? We've obviously spoken about Councillor Hookway a little bit earlier. Right, we shall start voting. Make sure I do this in the right order. So the first vote is going to be on the addition of a condition relating to 2 stories. Everyone's clear?
Will there be a recorded vote, Chairman?
I'm coming to that next. I'm slow and methodical. So first, can you please use your raised hand icon to indicate if you wish to have a recorded vote? There's just 1, so that threshold has not been passed. So can I ask those members in favour of including the condition about 2 stories to please indicate with their raised hand? Okay, thank you. Please drop your hands. Those members against that condition being included, please indicate. Okay. Thank you. If you could drop your hands.
My electronic hand doesn't seem to be operating there, Chairman. So,
would you like to just let us know which one you were voting for, Councillor Merrick? Just unmute, please.
I think he's on mute.
I'm voting against.
Okay. Are there any abstentions? It's a bit counterintuitive voting to abstain. Right, I have that as 9-3 in favour of that being included. So that additional condition is to be included. Second one, which is the additional condition to swap round the amenity space and the parking space. Those members who would like to have a recorded vote, please indicate. Thank you. That threshold has not been passed. Those members in favour of including the additional condition regarding the swapping of amenity and car parking, please indicate in favour. Thank you. Drop your hands. And those against that condition being included, please raise. Councillor Merrick, have you? Oh, you've been able to vote.
That's been simply working now.
Okay, thank you.
Just a click.
That's 6.
Okay, drop your hands, please. Does anyone want to abstain on that? Councillor Butcher, can you just indicate what you're, were you on an abstain one there? No, that's gone. Right, okay. Yes, no. Okay. Can I confirm that was a tied vote? Right. So the chairman's casting vote will go on this one, which I haven't had to use for some time, and I'm going to vote against this one to give the flexibility in the design and note the points about the proximity of play space to the building. So that means that condition is not included. Right, members, we now move to the substantive vote on this one, which is starts on page 7.1 going through to 7.8. It's the recommendation for approval. I move that from the chair. Could I have someone to second me, please, on this one? Thank you, Councillor Williams. And it's the conditions as mentioned through to 7.8, in addition to also with the condition regarding 2 stories. So if any member would like a recorded vote, could you please indicate now? No, okay, none noted. Those members in favour, please indicate with your raised hand. That's 12. And if we could drop our hands, please. Actually, there's 12 of us here, so that was unanimous then, wasn't it? So that item is carried. Thank you very much on that one, members. Next, we go on to item 8, Little Stambridge Hall Farm, Little Stambridge Hall Lane, Stambridge. As mentioned, there's a small amount of information on the addendum for this one. Sorry, I haven't noted who's presenting this one. Tells me in my notes somewhere. This is Mr. Stranks again.
Claire Buckley, this one.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. Okay, Claire, thank you. Off you go.
Chairman, this application is for the demolition of existing commercial units and the erection of 3 purpose-built commercial units with ancillary parking and landscaping. As you can see from the location plan, the site is a section of Little Stambridge Hall Farm located within the area of Stambridge. To further locate you, because I appreciate it's quite a sort of wide-spanning plan here, we have Rochford over in this corner here. As you come round the bend out of Rochford onto Stambridge Road, and then the access way into Little Stambridge Hall Farm is along Little Stambridge Hall Lane here, and access to the north up here. The area outlined in blue represents other land within the ownership of the farm, and the site is located within the greenbelt. So this is the block plan. So this shows a section of the site that is under consideration in closer detail, as you can see outlined in red here. There are a number of existing farm and commercial buildings on the site, on the wider site, as well as the existing farmhouse, which is a Grade 2 listed building located here. So moving on to, this is a bit more detail about the existing layout. So we have 4 former poultry buildings located here, an existing vehicular access which runs through the site, an existing other building which is located here, as well as some surrounding land within the application site. So maybe I'll just show you the photo. The poultry houses are no longer in use for agricultural purposes, but are being used for other commercial purposes through permitted development. So you can see the 4 existing poultry houses just about on this photograph here. The existing vehicular access would remain, and the existing other building, which is incorporated within the site layout, will not change. And here we have the proposal. So the proposal is to remove the existing 4 poultry houses and replace them with 3 purpose-built units. The proposal also looks to provide a formal car parking arrangement at the site with the landscaping, as you can see around this area here. This shows a 3D image, which I think is quite handy to visualise what the actual proposal would look like. So we've got 28 units in total, and they would vary in size or in a mix of small, medium and large size units. So this is block A at the back here, and we've got 4 quite large size units here. Then we've got the medium ones in the central block B, and then even smaller again in block C here, where they have double entrances on each side. All units would use similar materials, namely red brick and timber cladding to the walls, profiled metal roofing sheets and roller shutter doors. Block B would have solar panels. Blocks A and B would be just under 7 metres in height, and block C would be around 6.25 metres. It should be noted there was a previous application refused by members in August 2020 for a differing scheme at this site. This was refused for greenbelt reasoning relating to the scale, form and design of buildings, along with the whole site area not being considered to represent previously developed land. This application seeks to address these reasons for refusal by reducing the site area and reducing the footprint and scale of the buildings. The key material planning considerations are the greenbelt, economic considerations, impact on heritage assets, transport impacts, landscape impacts, trees and landscaping, flooding and surface water drainage, highway and parking implications, BREEAM, residential amenity, secured by design and ecology. So looking first at the greenbelt, whilst the proposed works are considered inappropriate development due to the scale being greater than the buildings that currently exist, the volume and footprint has been reduced significantly from the previously refused application, as you can see from this volume comparison plan. So on here, you can see the line of the existing poultry buildings, and then in a pink sort of looking line, you can see what we had and considered refused in August 2020, and then the blue is what we're currently considering at the moment. The site area has also been reduced, so the majority of the site is now considered to represent previously developed land. The proposal is now considered to have a more limited impact on the openness of the greenbelt. It is necessary to consider whether any very special circumstances exist to outweigh the harm identified by inappropriateness, and this is where the economic factors come into consideration. Local and national policy seeks to support appropriate economic growth. The reuse and redevelopment of rural sites to provide high quality workspace is an important part of employment land provision within the district. The proposal would support the rural economy by providing a high standard of and range of size of new business accommodation. Commercial space at this site would provide an opportunity to address the shortfall in space and would assist in preventing some businesses being forced to move out of the district as they grow or otherwise remain in unsuitable premises or at home. The harm by reason of inappropriateness to the Greenbelt, particularly considering the more limited impact this resubmitted scheme is considered to create, is considered outweighed in this case by the economic factors and benefits this development would deliver. Looking at the impact on heritage assets, there are 3 Grade 2 listed structures within the wider site: Little Sandwich Hall, the lodge and a wall attached to Little Sandwich Hall. It is not considered the development proposal to have any significant undue impacts upon designated heritage assets, and Essex County Council's Built Heritage and Conservation team does not object to the proposal. With regards to transport, a transport statement has been submitted in support of the application, which assesses the access, operational, traffic and transportation issues associated with the proposed development. It is not considered that development would give rise to any high-road safety issues, and this position is confirmed by the formal consultation response received from Essex Highways. Looking at landscape impacts, the applicant has provided a landscape and visual assessment with the application. This concludes, and officers agree, that no wider landscape harm would arise as a consequence of the proposed development. Looking at trees and landscaping, no existing trees will be affected by the development. The Council's Arboricultural and Ecology Officer has no objection to the proposal. The addendum highlights an additional comment from the Council's Arboricultural Officer referring to existing trees on the site. To clarify, the agent has confirmed that these existing trees were removed last year, and a comprehensive replacement planting scheme with more tree planting will be undertaken as part of this scheme, as shown in the landscaping plan. I'll just bring up that landscaping plan now just to show you. So this is what they're planning here, various trees, a tree-lined alleys along here, and then we have also amenity areas within the actual site itself. James Choate has since suggested that some instant trees such as oak, hornbeam, field maple or cherry would give similar screening to those removed, and the landscaping addition will be amended to require inclusion of some of these species. Looking at flooding and surface water drainage, the site is located in flood zone 1. The lead local flood authority has no objection to the proposed development, subject to the imposition of 2 standard conditions. Higher-end parking implications. The parking standards document sets out maximum parking standards for uses such as that proposed. The 31 spaces proposed here include a disabled bay to the appropriate size dimensions is considered acceptable. The provision of a cycle shelter is controlled by condition. Looking at BREEAM, the development will be required to meet the BREEAM rating of very good, and that's controlled by condition. With regards to residential amenity, the main farmhouse is shielded from the site by trees, hedging and buildings, so impact is considered to be limited. Dwellings within the wider farm site and Little Sandwich Hall Lane are not considered to have any greater impact from the development than the existing use. Moving on to secured by design, Essex Police initially raised concern regarding the lack of detail surrounding security of the design, but the applicant met with Essex Police and these concerns have now been addressed. Additional security measures can be incorporated into the build specification. And finally, ecology. The bat declaration form submitted confirms it is unlikely that bats will be present within the existing buildings. There is the potential for biodiversity enhancement through native planting at the site, and the landscaping plan, which has been conditioned for implementation, shows native hedging to be provided. Chairman, this application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, including the additional use restriction condition, which is referred to on the addendum, and a slight amendment to the landscaping condition to require some instant impact tree planting. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a speaker on this one, Ms. Kate Jennings, who's a planning agent. So up to 5 minutes, as you know, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Can I just say you're coming across quite quietly? Could you just speak up a little bit, please?
Is that better for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your time because Claire's provided a very comprehensive summary of the development. The committee did consider a proposal similar back in August, September last year. That proposal was refused because of its scale and extension into the Greenbelt. The site has been significantly reduced, both in scale and height, but also in the spread of the development, which is now entirely within the area of land considered to be previously developed land. And therefore the development is appropriate development in the Greenbelt. In taking on board the officer's comments in the previous application, the scale has been reduced down, as you could see from the plans before you. The footprint of the buildings is reduced by some 28% from the previous application that was refused. The volume has been reduced by 30%, and the ridge height in most cases has been reduced by over 1.3 metres. All of these amendments have considerably reduced the impact of this proposal in the green belt, and it's felt that this revised design is compatible with this rural setting. As Claire had said, national and local planning policy supports economic growth, and the Council's own economic land study update highlights the shortfall of grow-on commercial space within the district, and this is especially pronounced in the Rochford area. Workspace is at present in the district generally in low supply and of poor quality. This proposal provides high quality space in an attractive setting which will draw businesses to the area. The design of the development is such that there is provision for smaller businesses to grow on within the same site rather than having to move and relocate. It's important to note that there have been no objections, and we've worked hard with the consultees to ensure that there are no objections to this proposal, with Essex Highways, Essex Flood, the Built Heritage and Conservation Team and the Arboricultural Officer all in agreement with this proposal. There have been no objections from any members of the public on this proposal. It's considered this proposal offers exceptionally high quality design commercial space to support the economy in the Rochford area, and I would urge members to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just a reminder, members, in addition to the report, we've got one additional condition from the addendum, plus a slight adjustment with regard to instant planting. We've had a very thorough report on this one. Oh, hands are just suddenly starting to pop up. Can I just ask if none of the non-members wishing to speak? Okay, Councillor Steptoe, please.
Chairman, I've got a little bit of concern about access to the site. I believe I'm correct in saying that the access road is owned by the same landowner, and there is a footpath that runs along there. Obviously, our footpaths are in great demand at the moment, and of course there is a lot of encouragement to keep people using the footpaths. My concern is it's quite a narrow road, and with the increase in traffic that it's likely to cause, I'd like to see the landowner perhaps put in some safe havens so people that are walking the footpath can step aside quite safely for traffic to come past. The fields do go right up to the edge of the road. Of course, if there's crops in there, the farmer won't be too happy about the public dumping into his fields. So perhaps that's something I would like to propose as an additional condition. And I don't think it'll take an awful lot of work on behalf of the landowner to put a few safety spaces along the access road.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this. I think it's we should recognise the efforts made by the applicant to reduce to acknowledge the concerns of the committee last time round, and particularly at this time when businesses are suffering, that we've got a rejuvenation of the economy as well. So I fully support this, and so thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think this is a much improved application on last time. We would have no issues in supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Was there any information from Essex Highways? I didn't grasp anything from Claire from Essex Highways as to the entrance or the road leading to the premises.
Okay, we'll come back to the questions in a minute. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. I would concur with what Councillor Steptoe has said regarding I can't remember, sorry Mike, I can't remember what you said for pathways to go in. Thank you. For pedestrians. The applicant has done a lot of work down that road to try and make it safe already, and I would fully support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask you, Claire, to just pass comment on the suggestion that Councillor Steptoe has made and how that might be achieved or not? Are your thoughts on that, please?
I think if we have no concerns from County Highways with regards to safety, and obviously they also have the Essex Public Rights of Way section within their department that look at that kind of thing as well, I think we would be in a difficult position to actually require that as part of this application if they haven't raised any actual highway safety issues with it. What I think perhaps we could do is maybe add it as an informative, and the landowner themselves can consider that if it's something that they may wish to include as a reasonable landowner, that might be a better approach with this one.
Councillor Steptoe, just ask if you how you wish to pursue on that point you made. Would you be happy with an informative?
Thank you, Chairman. I believe the road is actually a private road. I don't believe it's part of the highway network other than the footpath itself. So I'm not certain that County Highways would have perhaps seen it in that particular light. But if it's better an officer advising that it should be an informative, I'd be happy to accept that.
Okay, thank you. Members, we've got, as we said, a comprehensive application, and we've had a comprehensive report. There is a recommendation for approval printed on 8.1 through to 8.7, plus the addendum and small modification, plus the addition of an informative with regard to pedestrians. I'll move that from the chair. Would someone care to second me on that one?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the vote on that. I just confirm that everyone has heard all the information. No one got cut off and feels that they're unable to take a proper and accurate decision on this. That's good. Okay, those members who would like to have a recorded vote on this, could you please indicate by raising your hand? No one's indicating there. Thank you. So those members in favour of the application as outlined with the adjustments, please indicate. Thank you. If you'd like to just drop your hands, please. That is unanimously approved. Thank you very much on that one. Next, we move on to item 9, which is 38 to 40 West Street, Rochford. And this is Mr. Stranks again.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is to a site on the northern side of West Street, just off the Market Square in the Rochford Town Centre. I don't know if Claire's able, the location plan in the top right, just if you just alert members to where the site is edged red, that'd be great, please. The site is a double unit comprising 2 shops that sold carpets and furnishings, but is now vacant. Whilst if we could see the lower part of the screen, if that's possible, Claire, where the indent is to the front of number 40. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Whilst on this plan, it's worth noting that the recess to the unit, which is number 40, the sort of slightly triangular shape. Yes, thank you. Where the cursor was, where it says 6.08 meters width. It's worth members noting as we carry on that the shop front is recessed. And although there has been some intervening work, the premises for many years had metal window frames. And though old and with the remodelled frontage, the building is not statutory listed. So it's in the conservation area. It's an old building, but it's not statutory listed. If we could jump to the proposed elevations, please, to plans 40. Planning permission is now sought for a new shop front, but members will see from the image at the top of the drawing that the recess is being retained because this allows for the provision of an access ramp. It's a proposal that is related to a proposed banking hub. Prior to September, Chairman, it would have required a change of use, but the government changes to the use classes order, putting all the town centre uses into one use class E now. It's no longer necessary to require planning permission for the change of use. What is necessary is planning permission for the shopfront alterations, where they're taking out what's there and they're putting in timber material that is black painted, as you see. It holds the same proportions, glazing to framing, that we had before, but it's a more traditional material. The rails to the ramp would also be in timber and black painted. As I said, the design largely maintains the former proportions. The access ramp and handrail would be considered by the County Council Special Advisor to be a visual intrusion, but district officers are finding they disagree with our colleagues on this occasion, because obviously the building to carry on being invested in would need a new use. And furthermore, the recess at the top of the drawing that you see there largely shields it from wider views. Some members will recall that the NatWest Bank, which is round the corner, although a modern building, also has a access ramp and handrail that was modified in 2004. But perhaps more importantly, the Martins building, which some members will be familiar with, was refused permission for something similar in 2007 because of a conflict with pedestrians on the nearby alleyway. And that inspector, although went on to look at the issue of conflict with pedestrians, made the point that the ramp and handrail, in her view, would not harm the character and appearance of the conservation area. So there is a couple of examples, including one precedent on appeal. And for that reason, district officers are disagreeing with our colleagues at county, and subject to the development being finished in the materials proposed, the recommendation is approval.
Thank you. Could we just pop off the screen share so as I can see everyone in the hands? All right, okay. Oh, lots of hands. Right, so any non-members wishing to speak on this one? So I'll start with Councillor Steptoe, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As ward councillor on this particular application, and looking at the general economy of the town square in Rochford, I'm sure other members will agree with me that to encourage improvements in the economy within the town square, the single biggest thing that we can actually achieve is to have banking facilities within the square, or adjacent to the square in this case. Those members that come from over in Rayleigh will be very, very aware that one of the reasons that people go to Rayleigh is because the banks there are still open. So I can't support this application enough. I think it's the single biggest thing that will make an improvement to the town square, encouraging businesses back into the square, opening up of shops, etc., etc. So it has my full support, Chairman.
I understand your sentiments, Councillor Steptoe, but in terms of focus, this is a new shop front and handrail application that we're dealing with. So if just bear that in mind, please, members. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I have to say, I visited this site, and it's a bit unfair to call this a ramp, really. It's a very, very slight slope that leads up to the front door. I'm not over happy with seeing the rail there, and I don't really think there's a need for a rail, but would fully support this this application. Thank you.
Councillor Mr. Shaw, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Although Mr. Stranks said about the two other places in Rochford that have got ramps, both of these are in the square, not down West Street itself, and both of them come onto pavements a lot wider than this pavement. The pavement in this area is very narrow, and I think that the ramp or the handrail is going to be intrusive to the area. there's nowhere else down that street that's got an handrail. And as Councillor Williams said, this is not a ramp, this is a slight slope. There's a building a couple of doors away from it, which has got the same sort of slope, and that hasn't got an handrail. I cannot support this application.
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very, very much in support of the principle of this. The one thing that we don't see, if I can just have clarification, we've got a plan showing or an elevation showing 40. We haven't got anything showing 38. I take it that that has got a similar spec where it is being a new shop front being put in there that is part of the scheme. If we're looking at condition for, or looking at the planning application for 38 to 40, but I only see 40 on the actual application. The other thing is I am a little bit concerned about the handrails, to be honest. If they're to be in wood, they do the sort of the application size that's been put in for there. I would suggest that that's quite flexible, and being wood at the bottom there, it's going to be susceptible to rot. I'm not sure how this actually goes against the conservation officer, but I think as far as safety goes, I'm not so sure how safe that would actually be in wood. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do hope, bearing in mind who the applicant is, that this isn't going to be politicised this evening. I, like Councillor Steptoe, fully support this. And like Councillor Williams, I visited the premises. I would like to remind members that the plans that Mr. Strank shows the front door is recessed, and everything's going to be recessed from the pavement. So I do note what some members have said about the size of the pavement, but it is recessed. The other thing to bear in mind, Chairman, is that the concept of this business is for the elderly and vulnerable members of the rural parts of our district, to prevent them from having to come to Rayleigh, which is slightly counterintuitive as a Rayleigh councillor, that I will be stopping people coming to our town, but it is for their benefit. And as such, we have to recognise that vulnerable and potentially infirmed people may need a handrail. I'm not at that stage of life yet, thankfully, so I don't know, but I would anticipate that's what its intention is, because this is aimed at the more elderly and vulnerable members of the community. So I fully support this application, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. I completely are at odds with Mike Wilkinson there. It's not being political at all. It's being on our environment. Wait a minute, excuse me, Chair. It's the ramp.
Planning matters only. Thank you.
Yeah, we're talking about the ramp. And when Mike Strank spoke about that west, it's the pavement is at least 3 times wider than the one at West Street. Yeah. You cannot get 2 people, even with a recess, you cannot get someone with a mobility scooter and a pedestrian walking down the pavement at one time. It doesn't work. I fully would support the business, but I don't support the ramp. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry about that. Yes, I fully support the business, but I would ask, can we put a proposal or a condition that only one side of the ramp would have a rail to it, preferably on the right, as most people are right-handed, as it would be easier for disabled vehicular to get onto the ramp, as it's sloped both sides and from the front. I think, and also, is it possible not, I don't know whether it is possible or not, because it is recessed on the property. So is it possible not to use wood, but to use a metal, as wood can be, it will rot over a year, unless you, I don't know whether they put them in metal stakes or something, but it will rot. And if somebody pushes against it as a mobility scooter or something, it could break.
Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support this application in the way that it's presented, and I'm happy to support any ease of access into buildings.
Thank you. I wholly agree with you. Can I just ask for any comments or officer comment on the points that have been made here.
Chairman, if I may, the applicant has had to jump through hoops that you wouldn't believe with the conservation guys. I am worried that whilst I understand the sentiment about use of metal, and I take the point about wood rotting, I do fear that I think metal may have been proposed before, but the conservation officer was rather insistent on painted wood. I can't help you with health and safety to do with one rails, but what I think you'll see from the signage application that comes later, the post office are also involved with this, and they have a specification, I'm sure, about access compliance, etc. So that the second rail is probably necessary for reasons I'm afraid I don't know, but I would caution members against the omission of the wood, because I think the metal railing that may have been suggested beforehand may well have been objected to by the conservation officer.
Could you just elaborate on Councillor Eves' point about the other half of the frontage?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. It being a double unit, the use will permeate into the adjoining premises number 38, but they're not proposing any alterations that I see to the shop front. There is a signage application to follow where both units are treated in signage, but this one at the moment is all about the works to the shop front to number 40.
Thank you. Members, I firmly believe that what we see is what we need to vote on. You're either going to be for it or you're not. The nature of the location means that the detail of the discussions about everything has been fully considered, and the officers have come up with the proposal. So I don't want to drag this out. It's a simple application. I'm only going to allow 2 more members to speak that have indicated. Councillor Eves, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just worthwhile considering an option on the ramp. The reason being why you have to have handrail both sides, health and safety will insist on it, because you could fall off the ramp. So is there any reason particularly why the whole of that area approaching the shop front cannot be ramped right up, so as it does away with the need for any I'm not going to turn down my consideration. I think this is worth approving, but it is something that gives me a little bit of concern, and so I'm wondering if that can be a solution that might be something to be considered.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Stranks, what is the height of this? It's not a ramp. Everyone's calling it a ramp. It's hardly a ramp. It's a slight incline. Could you tell me how many inches it is from street level up to the shop floor, if you like? Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, Claire, can you help me with the drawing, please, that shows the side? I don't have a figure for members, but I'm hoping that the drawing, I believe, shows a section through the ramp will give an appreciation of the ramp height. Obviously, it has to go up to the level threshold, which is the where the door actually is. But Claire may be able to help us here.
5 inches. 5 inches.
Yeah, I don't know.
What, is that 125?
5 inches.
125 mil.
All right, I can only do it
at its maximum, Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah. And does the ramp go for the whole width of the shop front? At the moment, it does. I know. I just wondered if is there a need for?
No, Chairman.
No.
The ramp to the proposal is just the area you see shaded grey below the door bottom there. So it doesn't ramp up the full recess like the chemist does next door.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Could we just go off the screen share again, please? Right, members, we have a...
Chairman, just for those people who are sort of in old money, as it were, the equivalent is 4 inches.
Okay, fair point.
5 inches, actually.
4 or 5. Right. Members, the application for approval is printed on 9192. There was a tiny bit of information in the addendum, but no additional change to the conditions. I'll move the approval from the chair. Would someone care to second me on that? Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson. Noted, or Councillor FD. Does any member require, everyone's heard, no one's been disadvantaged during the discussion with cutouts. It's going to stop them from voting. No, thank you. Does any member require a recorded vote? Please raise your hand if you do. No, right, thank you. Those members in favour of the application, please raise your electronic hand. Thank you. If you'd like to drop your hands. And if you are against this application, please raise your hand. Got that as 11-1. Okay, that application is approved. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair. Councillor Shaw, I want to abstain. Thank you.
Right, beg your pardon. I should have done that. That's noted, Councillor Ms. Shaw.
Thank you.
Abstention. Item number 10 is the same location, 38 to 40 West Street. And Mr. Stranks is taking us through this element of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Same plan. We can quickly jump to the next plan, please, Claire, 3B. Before we get into that, I would first ask members to note a correction to the description of the application. I mentioned in the previous item successive changes to it to try and appease the conservation officer. The description you have before you is that the sign there is new externally illuminated and non-illuminated. All the illuminated signs, there was a hanging sign which also has now been omitted, and the illumination has been omitted to overcome concerns from the conservation officer. So what we have here is signage proposed to number 38. It's all part of the same double unit, but you'll see that this scheme has a white background timber painted fascia sign that isn't illuminated, and you'll see it's in black lettering with green lettering. If we can jump to the next image, please. This is the drawing you saw before, which you'll see is a contrast. It's in a satin black colour and with the words Bank Hub. And here you'll see the logo of the post office. As I said, the signage has been modified and the revised description. The lettering and the styling and including the use of the window display is quite acceptable to the conservation officer. The window displays will be hung on wires, as you see increasingly these days. It's a timber traditionally painted sign, Chairman, and on the basis of the revised description omitting the illumination, the recommendation is therefore of approval.
Thank you. Okay. Right. This one looks reasonably straightforward, and without any members indicating, I believe we can move straight into the vote. The recommendation is printed on 10.1, 10.2. I'll move that from the chair. Would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor FD. That's noted. Does any member require a recorded vote on this one? No. Okay. Can I ask members, if you are in favour of this application, please raise your hand. I count that as 13 already, so that is unanimous. Thank you very much. If you'd like to care to drop your hands on that one.
Chairman, could I have a comfort break for a moment, please? Please.
Are the members in favour, happy with adjourning the meeting?
Yes, Chairman, I would like a comfort break.
5 minutes then, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm back.
Right, so we're not quite all back yet. Councillor Hookway, are you back there yet?
Yes, Chairman, I am here.
Okay. Right, okay. Thank you. We'll restart. Item number 11, 15 Hainault Avenue, Rochford, an application for a single story side extension, not normally one that would come to us, but Claire Buckley is going to present on this one, please.
Chairman, this application is for a flat-roofed single-storey side extension. It is before members for consideration as the applicant is a relative of the Assistant Director for Place and Environment and the Development Management Team Leader for the northern area of the district. As you can see from the location plan, the site is located within the residential area of Rochford in close proximity to the railway line. The dwelling is a semi-detached chalet style bungalow which benefits from front and rear dormers and an existing single-storey rear and side extension. The dwellings along Hainault are predominantly low-lying and single-storey in nature. This, as you can see here, this is the existing dwelling, and this is an existing garage carport to the property. And just behind that, you can see a bow window which forms part of an existing extension of the property. So this is the existing plan. The existing arrangement is being shown here. So we have a kitchen extension with bow window extending from this along the side elevation of the dwelling. So look at plan 4. So this is the existing arrangement. So that's where the garage carport is, and this is the existing extension with bow window. And then this is what we're looking at in terms of proposal. So here we have a single-storey side extension. We've removed the garage carport and it's attached to the existing wraparound extension here. It would be flat roofed with roof lights. Additions here, and we have a few windows high level to the side and a window also to the front elevation here. There will be a 1 metre separation between the extension and the boundary with the neighbouring property. The key material planning considerations are design, residential amenity, garden amenity, car parking and ecology. So with regards to design, the proposed scale, bulk and design of the single-storey side extension would be proportionate to the existing dwelling and would appear acceptable within the street scene. Looking at residential amenity, whilst the extension were projected on the entire flank elevation of the dwelling, the 1 metre distance provided would ensure it would not appear overbearing to number 11. The windows to the side will be high level and would not generate unacceptable overlooking. It is not considered that the proposal would be detrimental to the residential amenity of number 11 or any other neighbouring properties. Looking at garden amenity, the proposal will replace an existing carport and therefore would have no impact on the existing garden area. With regards to parking, the site comprises off-street parking that accommodates at least 2 car parking spaces at the required dimensions, irrespective of the removal of the carport. Therefore, the proposed development would not change the parking provision at the site. And then finally, looking at ecology, the bat survey declaration form submitted indicates that there is not likely to be harm to bats or their habitat as a result of the proposed works. Chairman, this application is recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Thank you. Yeah, members, it's a formality that this one comes to committee because of the connections. It's not normally will be a delegated matter. It's recommended for approval on 11.1, 3 points there. I see no one indicating, so I'll move this one from the chair. Would someone care to second me?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. Everyone heard the presentation. No one has been disadvantaged by intermittent connections or anything. So you're all confident that you're in a position to vote. That's good. Thank you. Does anyone require a recorded vote on this? Please raise your hand if you do. I see no indication. Therefore, to the substantive vote, please raise your hand if you are in favour of this application. I count 13. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Please drop your hands. Item 12, items referred from the weekly list. We have one item this month, Hillview House, 7 Hillside Road, Eastwood. And Mr. Stranks is again presenting to us on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is to a site located at the junction between Hillside Road and Rayleigh Avenue. Of interest to this application are the group of trees which are usefully shown on the site how it used to be, with a dwelling in the bottom right corner, as you see. And it's this group of trees to the left of the image that concerns us. To fill members in, some of these trees are subject to a tree preservation order. And if we can go to 3 plan, please. When planning permission was granted to demolish the existing dwelling and build 2 new dwellings, subdivided as you'll see, there was a condition on the consent granted on the 7th of May that concerned the area that you see hatched in the blue, roughly 45-degree, 60-degree lines there. Thank you, Claire. That condition, which is set out properly in the report before you, and I won't repeat it, required that details be submitted for the fencing, that the domestic curtilage fencing for particularly plot 1. The idea being, Chairman, was that the kind of pressure that you get from garden use where you have preserved trees tends to result in a lot of, say, compaction, trampling, outbuildings, what have you, that over time threatens those trees. And the fact that in dealing with this application back in 2015, this group offered a value of amenity that it was felt should be best fenced outside of the everyday uses. And the condition also included the removal of permitted development rights to put outbuildings under this canopy. So what was sought, Chairman, was a fence line that probably came off the side of the garage somewhere that you see, or possibly off the back of the house where you see that lone tree, to the left of the P to plot 1. Still an adequate sized garden area, but safeguarding those trees. Now, if we could look at 2 plan, please. Chairman, if you can see when we get there, thank you. I don't know if Claire with the cursor can follow the green, the sort of orangey line. What has actually happened is that a fence has been provided where Claire is showing there, and then extends with the dotted line northwards along that side. And you see that the garden curtilage, the sort of activity area, embraces and encloses those trees. Now that's in breach of the condition. What happened was that the applicant submitted details to put the fence there, as well as the other matters to do with the condition. And it was what we call part discharged. We signed off on the bits that were acceptable, but advised the applicant that that fence line was unacceptable. And as we speak, the fence that's been provided in that position that Claire was highlighting there is in breach of that condition. Now, if we can see at pick 5, thank you. Members will see that the fence line there, we can just see to the right of the street plate, Hillside Road, you can see the fence line, the concrete gravel board that meets us at the end there. That fence runs down the side, putting some trees on the outside, and the applicant, I think you'll see in the report, has made a claim that residents of other properties have sort of created a car park on that side. But the balance of the trees then remain on the inside of the garden. Now, the nature of Rayleigh Avenue is that it has quite open frontages. You can see some of this here in the image with the trees and the shrubs. And it was felt that there's an area important to the street character, and hence why these trees were preserved, that is rather leafy and open. And when you take into account also the potential pressure upon those trees over the life of the building, these were approved in 2015, they're fairly recent, they possibly have maybe 60 to 100 years of life in the dwellings. As successive families occupy this property, there will be pressure upon those trees, as I say, pruning, particularly trampling. It would be whether you have somebody who is pro-tree and would look after them, or whether you have people with other things on their mind and the trees become a nuisance. So we can see that it would be preferable for the condition to be retained. The proposal before you is to revoke that condition, to lift it out of the consent, do away with it. And what that would do, that would allow the fence line that you see to remain. It would allow for outbuildings to be provided in that area where the trees are. And therefore, Chairman, the recommendation is that this application be refused and condition 9 be retained on the consent for the development.
Disagree.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have 2 speakers on this one. It's Mr. Dagg first, who's patiently waited for the meeting. As usual, up to 5 minutes when you're ready.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. You've heard about the condition imposed in 2015. You've heard about the fence. You know that this house stands on the corner plot on the northern side of Hillside Road at Eastwood, junction with Rayleigh Avenue. You've just had an excellent photograph in front of you that shows the fence in question and the trees that Mr. Stranks have referred to. This was plot number 1 of planning permission 15-00046 full, as referred to by Mr. Stranks. To the northwest of this plot is the private, i.e. not highway, part of Rayleigh Avenue. You've seen that in the photograph. The fence in question is a standard 1.8 metre high fence, vertical, close bordered timber panels with concrete posts on the northwestern edge of the plot, defining it in relation to the private road, and immediately adjoining the fence and outside the ownership of the applicant, there is the private way, which has been widened by others to allow for vehicle parking. And you've seen some of that vehicle parking in the photograph. There was 1 car in the photograph. When I saw it last Friday, there were 3 cars parked in that area at right angles to the fence in question. The westernmost part of the Hillview House plot and the adjoining private way are dominated by a group of preserved trees. You've seen those trees. You've seen them in relation to the fence. They are very tall in relation to the fence. Some of the trees are outside the plot, some are inside it. You've had that from Mr. Stranks. These trees are largely mature. They're noticeably higher than the 2-storey houses adjacent. The trees are clearly important to the character of the area. Nobody is disputing that. There's some shrub planting along the western private way side of the fence, which softens the appearance. And the housing in the area is of pleasant suburban form, set back from the roads with frontage gardens and car parking. Well, what about the impact of this fence? The application is made to authorise its retention. It's accepted that it doesn't accord with the 2015 condition 9. What's the planning significance of the fence? It's very much subordinate in view as compared with the group of preserved trees. This is particularly the case in views from Rayleigh Avenue. You've seen that view. Given its typical suburban form, it does not, in my opinion, stand out from any aspect. This is a matter, of course, of opinion. I do not agree with the officer comments in the report that it introduces a prominent barrier that appears as an incongruous feature along Rayleigh Avenue, and that it appears out of place and detracts from the visual quality of the space. You've seen the photograph, and I imagine some of you have actually seen the site yourselves. I don't consider it does devalue the site's contribution to the street scene. Far from being incongruous, i.e. out of character, I describe this fence as being a familiar feature in a suburban area. I'd also disagree with the suggestion that there's been a material change of use. The wooded margin was plainly part of the planning unit created by the permission in 2015, and it remains so now. And it's very interesting to note that none of the 5 local residents that raise objection comment critically on the appearance of this fence. So going to condition 9, in my view, this condition was unreasonable when it was imposed, and it would be reasonable to dispense with it now. It's common ground that this group of preserved trees is important to the character of the area. The trees are within the Hillview House plot. Sorry, the trees which are within the Hillview House plot, they're not all within the plot, have been carefully maintained. They've been recently pruned with the approval of Mr. Choate, your tree officer. It's the tree preservation order that safeguards the trees. There are criminal sanctions for interference with trees that are preserved. The effect of implementing condition 9 would be to detach the western part of the plot from the house garden and leave it without proper boundary security. The fences installed does no harm to the trees. Preserved trees are often found in domestic gardens. Hillview House is set well back. There are no permitted development entitlements for outbuildings on this frontage. There's no evidence to support concerns expressed by local residents as to impact on wildlife. There's no badger set in particular. The biodiversity significance here is in the trees. The concerns with regard to further development expressed by some local residents are completely unfounded. And on that basis, I would request that planning permission be granted. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now have Mr. Wilkinson, who's an objector on this one. 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you've got about a minute to go. So when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members of the committee. My name is John Wilkinson, and I'm here tonight to oppose the recent plan application 210078. We live at opposite number 7 Hillside Road on the western boundary at 101 Rayleigh Avenue. Our family have been present at this address for the past 40 years. I'd like to add that the land opposite 101 was previously been owned by a couple called Ken and Betty, letting the field out to ponies with a wooden night shelter. Later years, a developer built on this field, leaving Ken and Betty a large plot to build their bungalow on, and part of this plot was set aside for wildlife. In 2014, the planning application 1400289 was refused as there was no consideration by the developer to the western part of the site. Approximately 12 months later, a second application was approved, along with a comprehensive arboricultural impact assessment, which was provided, and the dwellings were dropped down from 3 to 2. The notice of decision stipulated 14 conditions, including condition 9. However, I would also like to note condition 5, which states the retention of existing trees, shrubs and hedgerows on the development site, which have been removed during and since. My concerns were raised when construction works began erecting a wooden fence panel with concrete posts around mid-August 2015. This was on the western boundary line of Rayleigh Avenue, which I believe to be contrary to condition 9, i.e. to delineate the enclosed rear garden to plot 1 and not be used as a residential garden. I urgently raised my concerns with Rochford District Council, Katie Rogers, Robert Davis, Adam Aldridge and then Sean Scrutton via email and phone calls. I only ever received back out of office. These were dated 17th of August to the 26th of August 2015. I also took photos of the fence being erected at this time. This suggested to me that Mr. Panel had no intention of fully complying with condition 9. Following this, I was later diagnosed with a brain tumour. Over the next 5 years, I've underwent numerous operations, including radiotherapy, up until October 2020, which prevented me from contributing further on this matter. I would like to add that we have a good community neighbourhood relationship with Hillside Road and Rayleigh Avenue residents, sharing past photos, which I believe before the development at number 7 Hillside Road, showing the natural backdrop of the trees, which was the reason why most of the neighbours moved to this location. Before I close, we the residents, we the residents on Hillside Road and Rayleigh Avenue all agreed to retain what was there before the development was built on to number 7 Hillside Road, an undomesticated wooded area and semi-rural character, and we fully agree with the case officer's report by Katie Ellis. Thank you, panel members, for letting me have this opportunity to view my points.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, as a visiting member and as a ward member, would you like to lead off on this one, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'm well aware of the condition of this property prior to the current owner taking ownership of the land from the previous owner, Mr. Ward, who I knew. No relative, I might say. Yeah, Mr. Ward let most of his property go into a bit of disrepair due to his age, unfortunately. The area in question was definitely not a nature wonderland or a beauty spot by anybody's definition if they had seen it then. Going past it quite a few times and calling in and seeing him. I find it amazing that what has now been done to that area is anything less than a vast improvement, both in design and visual amenity on what it was like. I find the officer's description in the reasons for refusal completely at odds with the original state of the area as being discussed. I remember the original garden area as being totally unkempt, uncared for, full of rubbish at times, and a natural area for dogs to dispense their bodily waste. So, you know, I really don't understand. One of the reasons I feel the original condition might have been incorrect is the fact that the original bungalow and its garden had been established pre-war. That's prior to 1947, and I have a feeling that such restrictions on this land may have been unlawful, although obviously that's going to be a legal view going on by virtue of the Town and Country Planning Act in 1947 and the subsection in 48, which effectively confirmed the authorised existing curtilage and garden. As a result, the stated reason for refusal, i.e. material change of use as a matter of law, has not occurred. That's my opinion. I therefore invite the Development Committee to grant planning permission.
Thank
you,
you.
Chairman.
Do any other non-members wish to comment on this one? No. Okay, Councillor Eaves then.
Thank you, Chair. I think the thing is that Mr. Dagg and Councillor Ward have missed is the fact that there was a planning condition put on the application that was approved years ago, and I find it as a personal affront to the Development Committee that the applicant here has just ignored that totally and gone and done their own thing. Now, I find that disrespectful. For whatever you think about the build-up to this particular application, they've gone about it the wrong way. There have been a number of issues that have come to the council in recent times where people have just put fences up just because they want to. Now, we put a condition on there for a reason. Now, if the applicant thought that they had good reason to actually have that application taken away, then they should have done the proper procedure and actually applied to the council to get it removed. And if they had good grounds for it, then I would venture to suggest that the Development Committee would consider it, officers would consider it, and we would vote in a way which would be respectful to the council and to previous decisions that have been made. I will not support this application, and I would urge other councillors not to, because it's just showing total disrespect for anything that's actually gone on before. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Eaves has absolutely stolen my thunder. I couldn't have put it any better myself. My concern with this, I mean, I hear what Mr. Dagg has to say. I've heard what Councillor Ward has to say, and they're probably both right with the visual amenity of the premises. But the mere fact is, we're 6 years on. If this was an issue, they should have been dealt with in 2015. I'd completely disagree with any developer or applicants getting planning consent from the council with conditions and then blatantly ignoring those conditions. And I'm afraid this is 6 years too late for me. So I agree with Councillor Eaves. I will not be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I agree with the previous speakers, previous councillors, that obviously there was a valid reason for this condition being put in place at the time of the application, and the reason for conditions like this is that it's not about necessarily the particular occupant at the time and now who may have a a view of looking after the land, but it's about going forward into the future, and it's also about setting a precedent as well. We should not allow individuals to circumvent the conditions in planning applications. We shouldn't give the precedent for people to do that. And there is the opportunity for individuals to come back to the council if they have a differing view, and to put that through the planning process and allow that to potentially come before this committee for the members to consider. But to blatantly ignore the original condition, and then to erect something and then say, well, you know, it's there now and I've looked after the land and stuff like that. Unfortunately, that may be the case, but it's not pertinent to this particular decision that we have to make today. We have to support the officers. We have to support the reasoning behind what has been put forward before us today, because otherwise, if we don't, then we're only going to be undermining the planning process and other applications that come forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask Mr. Stranks that the car parking that's been put there, was that approved or not? And at the same time, I do think that taking the role of I know best is not always a good role to take. I do think that the residents should have contacted the council before any work was carried out. This puts the development committee at on the back hill, if you like, because what decisions they made in 2015, they made those for recommendation. They didn't do, you can do this and you can do that. So could you, with that question in mind, with Mike Stranks, could you give me some answer, please?
No other members are indicating at the moment. So, Mr. Stranks, would you like to comment on the members' various points, please?
The only point I have, Chairman, I think is about the car parking area and whether it's authorised or not. I'm afraid I don't have the benefit of that. I don't know if Miss Dunn does, and if she would be better placed to answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so part of the car parking to the front of the site has been constructed within that hatched area. So that is in breach of the planning condition as well. There is an enforcement case that's dealing with these matters.
That shouldn't distract members from what's before us,
Chairman, that's
tonight.
Could I ask you a little question? That is not the involvement of this particular application, is it?
No.
No, right.
No, just about the fence. Right, members, you've heard the information. I think it's time to take your decision. I just confirm that all members were able to hear the various points that have been made, are fully informed to make their decision. Okay, thank you. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you require a recorded vote on this one? No. So,
Chairman, sorry to interrupt you, but could you just clarify what you're going to propose?
that is exactly what I'm moving on to. So, members, the recommendation is that the request to remove the planning the planning condition number 9 is refused. Right? So we are voting to accept the refusal of the removal. Okay, hopefully that's clear for everyone. So no one said they require a recorded vote on this one. Can I just I'm moving that from the chair. Is there someone who's seconding me on that one? The number of hands gone up there. Okay, thank you very much. So can I ask those members to raise their hand if they are content with the refusal, that is keeping planning condition number 9 in place? I count 11 there. Thank you. If you drop your hands. We counted to 12.
Chairman, can I just say, I think there were 12 there.
Yeah, I've confirmed that. I've had that confirmed. Councillor Stanley, just your hand to go down. Right. Those members who are not in favour of the refusal, please indicate. That's the 1. That makes the 13. Okay. So thank you, members. So that that refusal is confirmed. So thank you for the efficiency of the meeting, members. I believe now at 9:32. That concludes our business and I close the meeting. Thank you very much. Meeting closed.